Hey everyone, welcome back. So multi-cloud is something that all organizations, small, medium, multinationals, are struggling to consume efficiently, optimally, cost effectively, or securely. And this is where this series, which this is part one of, that I'm calling Multi-Cloud, You're Doing It Wrong, will look at the requirements or the capabilities of a multi-cloud platform that will enable your success and achieve those desired outcomes that you're trying to get from a multi-cloud environment. Now part two will look at a solution, and part three will probably look at how to secure it up, but we'll see. We might go into more parts, but it's a work in progress. So in this video today, we're going to have a look at the requirements and capabilities of the platform that are required, and also a reason as to why organizations are usually falling short. Now this is the first time I've done a PowerPoint within a video, so it's a bit of a trial. We'll see how it works, but it was the only way I could think that I could get this across visually and not be so boring. All right, let's get into it. So there is a lot of reasons why organizations struggle to easily adopt multi-cloud. I'll cover two of the big ones that seem to reflect in most organizations. Now, every industry or vertical is going to be slightly different, but these two always seem to come up. Now, first one is complexities. So the old saying goes from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I don't think I'm pronouncing that right. It's been changed over the years. So basically says that the designer knows he's achieved perfection, not when there's nothing else to add, but when there's nothing else to take away. Now, basically what this means is keep it simple, stupid, right? The old KISS principle is the simpler something is, the easier it is to maintain, secure, and manage. And what we've been finding is that a lot of organizations, now this is usually down to what is referred to in the industry as resume-driven development, but I reckon we can twist that around to say resume-driven cloud architecture or architecture in a lot of ways. And what does that mean? So basically it means that individuals or teams, choose specific technologies over working solutions. So stitching together point solutions to make a complex platform, right? So adding unnecessary overheads to the processes, right? The other one is just, reacting to trends and rather than pragmatic solutions, hiring buzzwords over proven track records. There's a whole bunch of different things. You can Google it yourself if you want to have a look at it, but it is a thing out there. And this is one of the things that usually falls down, is that instead of looking at a integrated platform as a whole that does a lot of stuff out of the box, there seems to be a lot of stitching together of point solutions and capabilities, which then not only do you have to maintain going forward, but you also get stuck in upgrade or update hell, where you've got a lot of different circular dependencies on things you can upgrade, because you can't upgrade this version because this new version doesn't support it, but I can't upgrade that one because something else I'm using doesn't support that version. So you get into a bit of trouble, right? And the second part that usually comes up as being one of the blockers is organizational policy changing. So being able to change your organization policies to adapt to the as a service business model, which is what you want to get to. And what I mean by that is simple things like change control. Like instead of having to raise a change control and go through the process every time you want to do a deployment into any environment, doesn't really matter what it is, you just change control of the code and the workflows and the pipelines, and then I can provision it 1,000,000 times and never have to go through change control, right? So it's about adapting to the new way of consuming resourcing. Now, let's dive into these requirements of a platform that will help you with your successful journey in multi-cloud. Now, again, these can be slightly different based on the industries and everything else, right? But these are things that most customers say they need, and what I've seen when they've been very successful, this is what they've adopted. So we'll start down the left-hand side. First and foremost is around cost optimization. So, how do we cost and budget management through governed resource lifecycle, and intelligent use of cloud endpoints. So what's meant by this is that I want the ability to be able to take technical requirements for a particular application or deployment, merge it with the business requirements, and then choose the most appropriate endpoint that it goes to. So a great example would be maybe, I'm doing a particular upgrade. I'm using both Azure and AWS, and I've got on-prem vSphere for development purposes. Because I've got a whole bunch of MSDN credits that I need to consume, I'm going to use the development of that particular capability, like let's say an SQL upgrade capability that you're doing, and you're going to do it within Azure for dev. But as soon as it goes to prod, because the data that those databases happen to be holding can't go on cloud, or whatever the reasons are, is that it gets deployed on-prem. But being able to, the end users, not to have any choice in that matter, in that the actual platform itself makes the intelligent decision based on the rules that have been put in place, right? Now, this logic is very complex, so being straight out of the box is pretty handy, right? But that capability is something that all organizations want. So you want to be able to place based on cost, based on security, locality. It might be based on, obviously technical requirements around GPUs and particular performance capabilities, right? But at the end of the day, the end consumers, when they provision it, they code it once, deploy it anywhere type concept, is that when it actually gets deployed, they don't have a say. The platform makes that choice, right? So that way it's the best. The application owners get the capabilities that they want, and the business gets the most cost-effective and secure manner for deploying that, right? And also being able to, for the life cycle of the machine. So I want to know what it's going to cost before I deploy it. I want to know what it's going to cost if I scale it out. I want to know what it's going to cost if I add an extra disk, or I change the reconfigure CPUs, or I add a cloud service, whatever it might be, right? So for the life of that particular deployment, and it could be an app, it could be an environment, it could be a single VM, it could be a load balancer, firewall, doesn't matter, right? But I want those that capability to be able to cost and budget for the life cycle of that deployment and the business group that it goes back to. All right, so innovation and value. Obviously, the platform needs to be able to enable the organization to evaluate and exploit new technologies faster and extract greater value from the commercial arrangements with vendors. So really your cloud endpoints, right, as well as being able to, how do you interact with industry as an organization. So around about exploiting, obviously we want to be able to support both cloud native, on-prem, Kubernetes, that sort of stuff as well. But also, if needed, how do I deploy or start consuming, newly released services or capability that might be available from my cloud endpoints, right? So if the platform itself doesn't provide that natively out of the box, can it provide the capability to expand easily while keeping that capability still governed by the policies and securities and everything else that you have in place, right? So being able to use point solutions, such as, example would be Terraform or CFTs with Amazon or Lambda or something like that. So being able to actually consume these things, but still maintain the governance and security and placement and all the rest of it that goes around it, right? So being able to expand easily with very minimal overhead and management going forward. But also, once you have this environment, is how can you allow vendors to be able to plug in, to be able to offer up services and capabilities, but also, and this sort of moves a bit into the portability and standardization, but being able to keep your cloud providers or hosting providers with sharp pencils, because when you've got the ability to be able to deploy and make decisions on those endpoints, you can pivot very quickly as an organization, right? Now, on to portability and standardization, is obviously you want to standardize on resource and security configurations and reuse code wherever possible, enabling the portability of ICT workloads and building a contestable ICT vendor environment. So basically what this is saying is that we want to be able to code once, deploy anywhere, where possible, but also, being able to use cloud native services and be able to have the smarts in there to say, well, if I go to this cloud, we'll use this. If I go to this cloud, I'll do that. So it's still coded once, and I can deploy it anywhere. But what this allows you to do, and I've mentioned this previously, is allows you to pivot. So being able to and I had an organization that did this, was they had a commercial breakdown with a cloud provider, and they wanted to redeploy into another cloud provider. They were able to undeploy, so terminate 1,000 deployments. So it was probably about 2,000 or 3,000 machines and probably 1,000 load balancers and all these other things that go with it, with all those things, from one to the other, and they did it within a 24-hour period. So they were able to pivot because they had the code once, deploy anywhere concept, and being able to have those business rules and they pretty much terminated that particular cloud endpoint from being a choice from the end users, right? So they were able to redeploy, and this was a great thing. Like as I said, like thousands of workloads within a 24-hour period, being able to pivot those, and you can imagine the next day that cloud provider came in with a lot sharper pencils, wanting to win their business back, right? So it brings a lot of capability, a lot of power back to the organization when it comes to your ICT vendor environment. Now, when you've got all of these things, then you've got then you start changing culture. When people know that they can terminate something at the end of the day and come in the morning and redeploy it, and they have it within 5-10 minutes, there's no approval policies, there's no nothing, they can scale it out as a self-service, whatnot, the culture starts changing and people start adapting. But the organization does need to make changes to enable this culture change, right? And this is this is different, but I mentioned it previously. Change control is a simple one, right? But it's around making those sort of changes to enable this capability. Now, if we look across on the right-hand side, this is really around the as a service business model, right? So once you've got all that capability that I talked about on the left there, it makes the right a lot easier, right? So this is being able to, service business control, like process and support IT cloud-based service-focused business. So everything is a service, right? I don't want ticketing systems anymore. I don't want to put in a request and wait days, weeks, months for that to actually come through. I want to be able to request that as a service, right? And that could be anything. That could be adding a new user, right down to I want a whole testing environment, or I want an LLM environment with GPU and whatnot, right? And then we move into service implementation control, right? So how do we obviously have an inclusive process to define, develop, deploy, and offer services at a demonstrable business value. So being able to bring in, and again, this is an organizational team changing around being able to have that team that will go out and actually engage with the different areas of your organizations to help deploy and offer services that are valuable to the business. Right, being able to have that day 0 and day 1 deployment capabilities, but then moving into service operations control. Sorry, my sheep are making noise outside my door. Don't ask, that's pretty random. So we look at the service operations control, day 2, around processes focused on proactively operating deployed services in a policy-based and a highly automated way. So basically this means if I deploy something, resource, it doesn't matter what it is, a virtual machine, Kubernetes cluster, cloud native service, I want to be able to manage that at a day 2, and I want that governed by the same policies that were done when I deployed it, right? So I want the same security policies, I want the same approval policies if necessary, and I want the costings and everything that are available there. So if I deploy a machine, for instance, I want to be able to scale, I want to be able to reconfigure that, change CPU memory, change instance size, whatever it might be. I want to add a disk to that, I want to restart it, I want to stop it, I want to snapshot it, I want to take a backup of it, I deploy a load balance, I want to change a route on it, those sort of things, right? And everything's automated, right? So there's no need for tickets. It's that instant gratification in an as a service model. And obviously this then brings in the infrastructure and technical control. So we need to be able to manage, architect, and engineer the underlying infrastructure in an optimal way, so that it makes these things easy, right? So whether that comes down to the cloud design, that comes down to your on-prem design. Obviously, if you don't have software-defined compute storage or networking, it's very hard to have a cloud-like service. So it comes down to how you how you manage and architect your underlying platforms. Do you do a VPC per customer? Do you do a subscription per customer? Do you have one large one and carve it up? Like, there's lots of different things there, but this is where that infrastructure and technical control team will make sure that it aligns to what the business needs and the industry alignment that it needs too. Now, we finished that. That's a lot to take in. We'll have a look at, obviously, these are basically a high-level overview of the desired capabilities that all organizations need from the platform that's going to enable their multi-cloud journey. So obviously self-service, front and center. We want complete end-to-end automation. We don't only want stops, we don't want manual things. We want day 2 lifecycle manager. We all want it secure end-to-end. We want intelligent placement. We want to reduce technical debt. So, use most out of the box as possible. Everything is code, everything's software defined. We want single entry point for all users. So line of business users, cloud admins, developers, auditors, read-only capability. And we want to be able to support Kubernetes, virtual machines, cloud native capabilities. We want everything, right, to enable the business. But this is a really cool byproduct, and we talked about this with the contestable ICT vendor environment as well, but it actually will change the way you can integrate with industry. So you might go to tender as an organization for a particular service. Typically they would come in, they'd probably you give them some hardware and capabilities, they're building stuff. It's very much a black box, right? And then a lot of the times is, they might complete it. It's not actually up to security standards. They haven't used the right things. It needs a lot of rework. So being able to bring them in and plug them into this platform makes it very easy to add the vendors, to be able to create the service and then publish that service for you. And it also makes it very easy for the organization to control if there's commercial breakdowns, if there's security issues, even if you want to keep them on and keep paying them to iterate and improve that service. At least you know that they're working within the guardrails and the business rules and policies that you have put forward. So it's very easy for you to be able to remove or replace a contracted integrator, but it's also, and obviously keep and retain the IP that's in there, but it also makes sure that you've got that confidence that your governance and compliance is always met, right? Anyway, that's a lot to take in. I hope got something useful out of it. The next part will actually be talking about the solution. Now, there pretty much is only one platform on the market that does everything that I've just talked about easily, but and those that know my channel will obviously know what it is, but we'll talk about that in the next part. Until then, stay safe. See you next time. See you, bye.